ministry is so much more than what everyone sees on stage.
There's a lot of times where I wasn't sure what the Lord was doing, whether it was financially or where I was going to live. Wasn't sure what was going to happen, but I just knew to trust in the Lord.
It's not going to be financially easy to go into ministry.
I'm so thankful for my mentors because I feel like God reveals himself in so many ways through them.
Conflict is honestly one thing the devil uses to keep you from growing closer to people. Hi. Welcome to this week's of Fridays at First, right? When we said we were starting, she stared at me. I was like, hi. All right, 1, 2, 3. We're started that way. That is not getting edited out, by the way. So, nice. Welcome to this week's of Fridays at First, and you can tell we're going to have a good time today. My name is Pastor Nick. I'm back. I feel like I'm a guest on the podcast.
Yeah.
Been 3 weeks since I've been on one.
Sheesh.
Man, no wonder they've had higher views the last 3 weeks than normal. So,
Show Pastor Nick some love.
Yeah. So I've been traveling all over the world, literally, not literally, but kind of. Jamaica. We were on a mission trip in Jamaica. Came back for a week. You were gone that week because you had a bunch of kids at youth camp.
Oh, yeah.
Did it go good?
Yeah, youth camp was great. Great time. We're just growing in the Lord and having fun. It was good. Carrie was there as well.
Carrie was
awesome.
there as well.
I love it.
So we didn't record while you were gone because you're the brains behind the I'm the face, you're the brains.
Yeah.
And so then last week I was on vacation, Lake of the Ozarks, but you and Mr. Dennis Freilich had a great episode, so I encourage you to go back and listen to that. But we are back, and we actually have more guests with us today. You do know Carrie. Carrie's been with us before. She's our summer intern, but part of our ministry team from Arkabutla Baptist Church when I pastored there. Mr. Tyler Shook. Tyler, wave at the cameras.
There you go.
Tyler came on staff at Arkabutla in 2020, right in the middle of COVID, as our music director, and then he served as our music director, then a stint as our music and youth director, and then back again as our just music director, right? And so we've been together, known each other for 6 or 7 years. We served together for 4-ish, and so great people, great friends. They're up here visiting with us. What you laughing at? They're great people.
He said 6, 7.
Yeah.
I can't do it.
He's a child.
Yeah, that still hasn't worked its way out of Mississippi yet. But
Did they get everything a little bit later?
A little bit later and hold on to it a little bit longer. So Tyler now is on staff full time at a church called New Palestine Baptist Church. What town is that in?
So it's in Picayune, Mississippi.
I'm from Arkabutla. He's from Picayune. So
Picayune.
Welcome to Mississippi town names.
There you go, yeah.
And so he's actually, fun story, his pastor at New Palestine was actually the BSU director at our local college in Mississippi and introduced me to Tyler when I got to know him and brought him on staff at Arkabutla. So Walt, I'm throwing a shout out to Walt, name drop. Walt's a good guy. So he's on staff there, been there for how many years?
You got there in 2020.
Been at New Palestine.
I've been to New Palestine. I've been at New Palestine for a year and a half.
Year and a half, all right. Well, good deal then. He's got a wife, Sabrina, who is like my wife, his better half. My wife is my better half. Brett's wife's his better half. Yep. She's still looking, so she needs a worser half. So that's being said. But they're staying with us. Got a daughter, McKenna, and one coming soon.
That's right. One on the way in November.
One on the way in November. So
Sweet.
Father of 2 girls.
Yes, sir.
And so good deal. Well, without further ado, we'll dive right in. So we don't know what this episode's about. So we are literally just talking, and we're talking all things ministry. And so I figured we got Brett. He's been in ministry for a little while. I've been in ministry for a little while. Tyler's been in ministry for a little while. Carrie has seen the behind the scenes of ministry a lot because even as a high school student, she served behind the scenes with us at Arkabutla, and she kind of has that youth and young person perspective of ministry. So we're just going to kind of talk highs, lows, all that kind of stuff. So as we dive in, we'll start down Brett down there. We'll kind of just go along, and anybody jump in if you feel led to jump in. Brett, how long you been in ministry?
So 5 years full-time, and then I had 2 years part-time before that, and then been serving in youth ministry for a while. I was active when I was a student in high school, and then when I was still in college before I was an intern where I was getting paid, I was still going back doing retreats and different things like that. And so full-time, 5 years, and then 2 years part-time, and then still serving.
Still
besides
serving.
that.
Awesome. Tyler, what's your ministry? How long you been in ministry?
So like I just said, New Palestine, been there a year and a half. That's full-time. That's my first full-time job. And a collective of probably about 8 years in part-time ministry at 2 different churches. So
You were at Grace Creek, which we can name drop that, Grace Creek.
yeah, Grace Creek in Hernando, Mississippi, and then I was there for 3.5 years, and then I was at Arcabella for a little over 4 years.
4 years. Carrie, you've been serving ministry since you were how old? Serving behind the scenes and worship teams and youth and children?
Like 14, 15, so like 4 years.
4 years.
Yeah.
And again, you've seen a lot of behind the scenes stuff because like you said, Arcabella was we only had one full-time staff member, myself, and a lot of volunteer staff, and so you were a volunteer staff person with our children and youth and all that kind of stuff in our worship team. I've been in ministry since 2010, so that's 16 years, and so a little bit of we got different levels of experience, but none of us, I would say, are super old, and so I'm middle-aged. You have told me, but we're just going to give you some just real talk. So as we dive in. Highs, lows, ministry. And I think one target for this can be those who are feeling called to ministry, those who might be, because I know in our church we have a few who are potentially feeling called to ministry. I met with a young man on Sunday who's not even part of our church, but he wanted to meet and talk about the call to ministry. So let's just be real about ministry. What are some highs? What are some lows? What are some things you would want to tell some people going into ministry that they might not just know off the cuff? Anybody going to start?
Yeah, I mean, one of the first things I learned whenever I was doing my internship at FBC Bolivar, so glad that I got that opportunity, but I don't know, before you are doing some of the ministry work, you're like, oh yeah, you're just going to like study the Bible and you're going to that's what ministry looks like. And yes, you do, you get to know God more and you study His Word and you teach it, and that is a part of ministry, but a lot of times that's the smaller portion of your time. And so one thing I learned at that internship was so much of that time is a lot of that behind the scenes stuff of cleaning up after activities and organizing things and those things that no one's ever going to even see. And I think there's a good thing of that, of realizing that early on, that ministry is so much more than what everyone sees on stage or when you're teaching or leading a Bible study. There's a lot of just hard work that goes into behind the scenes where you can get to that point of just serving people.
A lot of parts of ministry that people don't know that goes on, and honestly, they're not very pretty parts of ministry. Like you say, they're cleaning up things, plunging toilets, doing stuff like that, because that's part of
inflatables.
Do it. Deflating inflatables. That's what she spent her whole work day doing. What day was that? Monday?
Yeah, I think so.
And we had a whole lot of inflatable pools still left up from kids camp, and that's intern work. So you did a wonderful job, by the way.
Thanks.
They are back, deflated, and put away. So, but yeah, and so I love that because there is so many. Again, and I think that's one time sometimes, especially youth ministry, that you see youth pastors and you think it's all on the stage, the fun and games, getting people to, eat goofy stuff and do all that. And you're like, that's awesome. But then that's really a small part of ministry. It's the work behind the scenes, the organizing, the talking to parents, the conflict, the planning, the preparing, volunteering. When you go to, I know we just had youth camp and, room assignments, stuff like that. I mean, it's those things that you don't see. So yeah, lots of stuff behind the scenes that no one will ever know you do, that you do. Tyler, what are some, if somebody's going to say, I feel called to ministry, what's a piece of advice you would have for me? What's something you would tell them?
Man, just going to sound cliche, but trust in the Lord. There's a lot of times where I wasn't sure what the Lord was doing, whether it was financially or where I was going to live. Wasn't sure what was going to happen, but I just knew to trust in the Lord and everything. It might not be how I expect it to be. It might not, necessarily be in my favor, but it will work out because I just trust that the Lord will work it out, and He has the ultimate good plan for everything. And so I've seen countless times God pull through in ways I never expected to. Just when I prayed and I was patient in situations and just let the Lord work and not try and strong arm some situations I probably could have, and it just would have like messed up. And I've done that before and messed up in ways. So yeah,
we're human. We tend to mess up.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna bring a unique question to you here in just a minute, Carrie. But I wanna piggyback on that real quick because you said something about you don't know what the Lord's doing financially a lot of times, and there's a false notion that. Pastors are in it for money sometimes because you see the big name pastors who make good money and write books and do all that. But the average minister, it's a financial sacrifice. I know when, for example, you were at Arcabella, I was working 4 or 5 jobs on, I was technically a full-time pastor, but I was working, you were having to work 2 jobs?
3 jobs including the church.
3 jobs including the church, and I'm sure coming up in youth ministry, there's many times it's a financial hardship. And so one thing that gets on my nerves when pastors or people get into ministry, ideally it's good to be supported full time, but we do ministry whether or not, yes, it's a blessing to be able to be supported, but those first few steps of ministry, and maybe even prolonged than that. Like you're working other jobs and you are sacrificing, and what you would say is a livable wage is not probably being paid to you at the church. So what would you all say about that? I mean, has it been a financial sacrifice to be in ministry? Have you had to work part-time jobs to do ministry? All those types of things.
Yeah, for sure. Like I just said, I had 2 other jobs alongside the church, and they were full-time jobs, and just to support the family and kind of make things keep going but I still wanted to be faithful to the church and to the work I was doing with the church. I didn't want to mess up the things that were going on there and kind of dishonor the time or the role that I had by not honoring the time that I'm supposed to be there on Sundays and Wednesdays. So I just made sure my schedules were worked around when I had those jobs and made sure I was diligent in my work.
You did a very good job at that too. But yeah, I'm laboring this point for one reason, because if you're a young person called to ministry, someone it's not going to be financially easy to go into ministry. Brad, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I'd just like to add 2 things. One, Ruslan KD has a lot of good resources related. He's made a lot of YouTube videos related to this topic and he's gotten into debates with some people that are on the other side of this that are saying, pastors are making too much money and they're robbing the church and different things like that. And he brings up the statistics that you just brought up of that most pastors on average are making below the normal income level, and that is the majority of pastors. And so yes, you have some pastors that are making probably more than they should, but there is a majority that are making below what is average for not just pastors, but for everybody to make and live off of. And so even if you're working full time, for us at our last church, I was working full time, but then my wife also had to be working full time almost. And so just to get by, and that's a normal thing, and you should be ready for. Some of that sacrifice, either having to have another job is a normal thing, or finding creative ways to use the funds. But the thing is, God will provide.
Absolutely.
God will provide. And especially there's ways that different churches help out with that. There's ways, but God will always make a way if that's what He's called you to.
And that's what I want to just put in there. I've been discouraged sometimes talking to young people because they feel called to ministry, and then they realize their internship is $100 a week, or their first part-time position. They're like, this is hard. Well, it's going to be hard, and you're going to have to work your way through. And honestly, I know people who have pastored for 40 years that have been bivocational or co-vocational their whole life. So we serve that call to ministry is not just a call to full-time vocational ministry. It's a call to whatever you have to do to carry out your ministry, whether it's work more jobs, whether it's then you do it because it's worth it. Well, I know you like to talk and you've been quiet for a minute, so we'll bring you in. No, I'm just kidding. Oh. But one thing I want to ask you, because one thing I thought was really cool bringing you onto this episode too is you're our intern. You are going to school for nursing, but you do have you know that the Lord, you want to be used in some type of ministry for the Lord, whether it's ministry or medical ministry, missions or stuff like that. And with Tyler here and his wife Sabrina, who's not on the podcast but here, and also with me and Rachel and some other people, what have ministry mentors meant to you? Like, so for one reason that you have desired to do this because you've had mentors and you've had people you've seen do it. So what's the importance of mentors? And for young people, if you feel called to ministry or you need to find some mentors like this, so what have mentors done for you and your desire to serve the Lord?
Well, I'm so thankful for my mentors because I feel like God reveals himself in so many ways through them. Like Tyler and Sabrina have definitely been my biggest mentors. Sabrina especially, she's poured into me so much, and there's been so many times that I've like called her and they've dropped everything. I could show up at their house at any point in time with a struggle or just be having a bad day and just needing to decompress. And they have always been there and they have always been present. And I feel like the Lord has worked through them so much in pouring into me and encouraging me just by them being present in my life.
And that's important for those listening too, because, for example, Sabrina, though she's never actually been, maybe for just a season, but she's never been actual one on staff. But she has a huge role in the ministry, and so for spouse and all that, but also just how much, even if you're not in the ministry, if you're a Christian who's been walking, how you can mentor young people. And like you said, it wasn't so much even ministry mentoring, it was you just needed a Christian voice into your life, giving you wisdom and counsel and helping you look at things from a biblical worldview.
Yeah, and I still go to them for things like
And you should.
advice, like what they think about certain situations, or what I should, like even I have really bad anxiety, so it could even be like the smallest thing that I need help with. Like I don't know where to do, I don't know what to do, I don't know what to look for, and I always go to them, and they always give me really good biblical advice, and they really discipled me whenever I was a fresh Christian too.
And so that's important. Good deal. Any other thoughts on the importance of finding mentors or being mentors or anything along those lines?
I'll just say it was super beneficial both when I was in high school, just being a part of like what our student leadership team like looked at that point was super helpful during that time, but then even now just being able to go talk to my old youth pastor and be like, hey, what did you do with this? And that is so helpful. And never, if you're feeling called to ministry, never forget that of like, oh, you might have more maybe one-on-one mentorship at the beginning, and that is a good and beneficial thing to have that, because when you're starting you don't know anything, and you realize that you need that wisdom. But then even as you get older, never forget that humility of going to other people. I love talking to Pastor Nick, I love talking to Pastor Brett, and other people in ministry, and be like, hey, what would you do in this situation, or do you have any wisdom to speak into this? And having that humility goes a long way and will help you not only build relationships, but also help you in your ministry.
Absolutely. I love what you said. You have to go. Sometimes you have to seek out that mentor. I mean, I've honestly not been the best in that, in seeking out. I have a lot of digital mentors that I listen to and consume their content, but just going and sitting at the feet of people is something I probably could do better of. And it's not just because I don't want to. I love listening to other people. It's just that I have not made the time for it. And so I'm telling you that from a do better perspective on my part is, yes, go and be diligent about finding those mentors. What about you, Tyler? Anything on that?
I mean, just if you are the mentor, or just be kind of receptive, kind of listen, take some time to just kind of hear them out, hear their side, and not, I guess, unless you just know how to help them answer their question, but just like, hey, I might not know the answer to this right now. Let's see if we can find something in Scripture that can help us out, or things like that. But that's kind of how we tackled it, I guess. We just tried to do our best to listen. That's one thing I've learned, not to react too harshly, too quickly to situations, because if you do, if you don't think it through, if you don't kind of consider all the variables, it could be kind of not the right advice that they would need. That's kind of what I have.
So just making sure you're giving biblical sound counsel, not just opinionated counsel.
That's right.
Let's swing the conversation to a little bit more about practical ministries. So ministries not always clean. Sometimes it's messy, and we're going to get to the good part of it. We're building up to where we're going. But what are some, and Carrie, especially from a a young person, like we can maybe kind of take this towards navigating church hurt, and because sometimes we sometimes think that ministers are immune to church hurt, or that that's your job, so you just need to deal with church hurt. But we could also take this to the layperson side about how we deal with church hurt, how when you have people, you're going to have problems, anytime you do life with people, you're going to have conflicts, you're going to have things like that. It doesn't mean you get up and run from the church, you get up and do anything. Those actually strengthen you. And how one thing that makes me nervous, and I think we've talked about this before, Brett, is when people get saved and they start serving the Lord, and then they're just church attenders for a while, but then they begin to come into actual church leadership positions, whether it's committee leadership or things, and they start to see that, there is conflict. Not because it's bad conflict, but like you said, I said a minute ago, just doing something like rooms for kids camp. You're going to have, this kid wants to be this kid's parents want them to be this, and it's just dealing with people. And so, Carrie, as a youth, what are some ways that you have seen conflict in church, that you have seen just kind of, it's not all roses, and how have you kind of navigated that as a young person?
Well, I remember this specific day, and I was really young. I was like 11, and it was just like this critical climax of trying to transition from really older traditional worship to newer contemporary worship.
It's a big problem in many churches.
Yes, and it was a very big thing in our little small town. And I just saw the human nature of people, and that how much we really needed Jesus through that. Because I was really young. My dad was like, go. You need to leave the room. And
I was at that meeting.
Yeah,
I was there.
You were there. You were there.
I know what you're talking about.
I'd never seen anything like that before. And there's always a front that's put up with Christians that they have it all figured out, but we don't have it all figured out is the thing. And so that was a really big moment in showing me how much we all really needed Jesus, because we are so imperfect. Well,
I think that's so you were a young person, and I was there. It was a divisive meeting. It was ridiculously stupid, to be honest with you, because at that meeting we were simply just talking about updating our hymnals. That was it. Like, it wasn't even going full contemporary. It was updating hymnals, and you saw the real side of people. So I applaud you, because that could have been something that a young person could have said, well, if this is what Christian walk is, or what people are, then I don't want nothing to do with it. You could have used that as an excuse to push you away from the church. But I love your avenue that it showed we are all sinners, and we need. And so honestly, what you are saying is, seeing church conflict actually helps you realize our need for Jesus, not to push you away from Jesus. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Good deal. Yeah. All right, well, y'all, what's some way you've navigated church conflict or hurt or personal hurt in church, and how has the conflict in church not pushed you away from Jesus, but pulled you toward Him?
I'll say advice with this, and you've kind of already said it, but just to be clear that God is still good even when His people are not. I think that's a very important thing to remember, because church hurt is a real thing. And some people use an excuse in a way that they shouldn't, but people are damaged and hurt by people who should be the very ones that show them the love of Jesus. I've experienced that in my own life. The people that I was closest to that should have reflected Jesus to me didn't, and hurt me and my wife in ways that still working and forgiving and bringing that to Jesus. But at the end of the day, keep on bringing that to Jesus, because He is still good even when His people are not. And if you are wondering about that and need those realities, realize that was true even in Jesus' time. There's a reason why Jesus was getting on to the religious leaders of His day, because they were abusing the people, and He even says they were like sheep without a shepherd. And so remember that God is still good even when His people are not. And I think the other thing I'd say with this, I don't know, do you have anything to add? I have another thing to say, but
I don't have really much other than what y'all said is I agree with, so far,
I had one.
I'll say something real quick, then we'll take a break. One thing about church hurt that I think is so important is, I heard a guy say one time, the people you'll be the closest to at the end of your life are the ones you went through the most with during your life. And it's reality of conflicts conflict actually breeds closeness if you handle it right. And that's why people who've been married 60 years, they had hard times, they had hardships. I know marriages where they even separated for a time when they were in their 40s, and then they came back together and they're closer than ever. And so one way that we are refined and we actually have closer relationships is by going through the conflict with each other, because the church we were all in, like, there was some hard times there, but the people who weathered those hard times, man, I feel like we were closer on the other side of that than we were before, because we went through that fire together. And so I would say this, and then we'll take a break and we'll bring it back in what you like. The conflict is honestly one thing the devil uses to keep you from growing closer to people, because when you feel conflict, you're, oh, I'm rolling, I'm out because I don't need it. No, if you just would weather that conflict and endure it in a God-honoring fashion, you're going to come through that conflict and you're going to have closer relationships with people and closer relationship with the Lord. And I'll say this, you will never be active, involved, and part of a church for any amount of time where you don't have some type of relational conflict with somebody else, disagreement with church leadership that you have to weather together. So conflict actually breeds health and closeness if you handle it right. So we'll dive right back in. We got to take a hard break real quick, and we'll be right back. Well, welcome back to this episode of Fries the First with our second-time guest and our first-time guest. But yeah, we're kind of talking about church hurt right now and how we navigate that. It's real for pastors. It's real for young people. Carrie talked about how she experienced it as an 11-year-old. And I tell people this when we're doing baby dedications, is like one thing we dedicate to the family is that we need to model what a church is, because what they see here is going to largely shape what they see of God's church. So, Brett, you have something else to share about that topic?
Yeah, I had one thing that I wanted to go along with what you were saying, because conflict isn't always a bad thing. Jesus is in the business of turning curses into blessing. We see that in our lives spiritually, of just like, turning like sinners like us and to Christians into believers and renewing us and giving us a new life. But also, and even in the hardships and difficulties of life, there's scripture that talks about. And there's so many times in ministry, especially, where, yes, it'll still be draining, it'll still be difficult, and a lot of times you're going to wish at the beginning of it that, man, I wish this wasn't happening right now. There's been so many times where I've been like, dude, God, why does this have to be this way? Like, why can I just catch a break? But even in those moments, I find after, whether it's like, issues with a parent or a student or just a life thing or this other thing, after those times, things end up being even better than they were when they started with. And sometimes those conflicts bring up stuff that you've been putting off dealing with and should have been dealt with, but then God works in that. And so that's one other thing I just wanted to say is that Jesus is in the business of turning curses for blessing. And so even some of our church hurt, especially when we bring that to Jesus, He can turn great things out of things that we thought that we would never want to deal with. And then the last thing I just want to say with like church hurt stuff, the last piece of advice, and I've mentioned this before on the podcast, one of my favorite books recently is Timothy Keller's The Freedom of Self-Forgetfulness. Because the thing is, make sure as you're going into ministry that your identity is secure in Jesus. Mm-hmm. Because it's only when your identity is secure in Jesus and that your worth and your value and identity are in Him that you'll actually be able to love the very people that are hurting you. Mm-hmm. Because if you are insecure about who you are and your value, what's going to happen is, one, those church hurts are going to hurt a lot more. Because it's going to be attacking your worth and your value and how good you are. And instead of being able to care for the very people that are hurting you, you're going to be, well, what about me? How does this make me feel? But when our identity is secure in Jesus, then we can actually live out what Jesus called us to, of love our enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. Bless those who curse you.
Well, I love that. And I think one of the downsides of our culture right now is we've taught a generation that if there's conflict, you don't need that in your life. Get difficult people out of your life. Now, there are people you need to get if they're harming you or they're dangerous. I'm not going to go. But a lot of that talk is actually just people that annoy you or frustrate you. Like you're like, get them out of your life. You need positivity in your life. And reality is this, that Bible says it's iron sharpens iron. So and when you use illustration a lot, but when iron sharpens iron, there's sparks and so actually when you run from hard conversations, when you run from difficult, you actually are not strengthening yourself. You got, and that's one thing. If you look through life, I always use this example. Not too long ago, President Trump and Zelensky in Ukraine were on a. They actually showed a meeting they had, and there was harsh words they spoke between each other, and the whole country is like, "Look how mean these people." No, they're leaders leading a country like that. You think back in the day, like George Washington was sitting around with me, like, "Well, how do you feel about it?" No, I mean. Productivity comes from hard conversations. And so in your church, young people or just church members, remember this, that one of the best things you can do for the Lord is stay where you're planted sometimes. Even when, now, if there's a essential reason you're out or it's a heretical reason, that's a different story. But if it's just hard, then one of the best things you can do is stay planted where you are. Because like you said, some of the greatest blessings I've seen in ministry are through some of the greatest valleys I had to walk to get to those blessings. And we'll talk about that right now because we want to get to some of that. I mean, there's nothing greater to do with your life than to serve Jesus. So there is hard times. There is things you don't expect, but there's also, man, I couldn't imagine doing anything else with my life because seeing what God does in ministry and in churches, I mean, seeing lives changed, it's phenomenal. So let's go the other side of that. Carrie, as a young person, what are some things you saw in church that encouraged you, that you saw the Lord do, that you were like, oh man, this is worth what it cost?
Oof.
Besides the awesome preacher you got to grow up under.
Well, honestly, like the transition of you becoming our worship pastor, I learned so much under all that time, like from you. Just on like how to lead worship and the heart behind it, because we didn't really have that much of. I mean, we had a worship ministry before that, but it was kind of a mess. It was all over the place, and so I wasn't really learning much. To me, it was just singing. So getting to learn under y'all and just under different mentors at our church was really awesome, and just getting to wean off Sabrina's wisdom too. We should have got Sabrina on the podcast.
We should. She's basically on the podcast, even though she's not here.
Phone her in,
Phone in a friend. Mm-hmm. But yeah. So you saw, and I love because the church we came from is not perfect. Never was perfect, but going through those trials, those battles, I would say strengthened that church. And if you even look back in where, that area right now, that church, though, again, like no church is not perfect and all that type of stuff, but I would say they're one of the stronger, more vibrant churches in that area right now. And we had to walk through a lot of crud to get there. And I remember my wife coming to me one time and being like, we either need to stay and see this through, like we saw it coming, or we need to, leave because it's not going to be pretty. And we prayed through it. We went, no, we're going to stay and see it through. And there's many times because we saw lives change. We saw hearts change. We saw families change. We saw a church that had a pretty poor reputation become a church that had a good reputation and a growing church. And man, that was awesome to see, but it came, that victory came on the other side of battle. So Tyler, what about you, man? What are some awesome things you've seen the Lord do in your ministry and life that you just affirms and confirms to you, man, there's nothing better than serving Jesus?
Man. I mean, it's people getting changed. Like we see one guy, his life is like not about anything of Christ. He's, going through some rough stuff. He was at, the church we were at, and then he comes to a wild game supper and gives his life over, and
That's good.
Now he's involved. His marriage is like back together. And,
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, and so like just the fruit of that was such a sweet thing, and just night and day difference. And not just him, but just in general, people like that. You see that time and time again, God working in people's lives, and it's nothing that we do to do that. It's just us relaying that message that, hey, Christ can.
Because there was a couple hundred people that wild game supper that night, and there was a few salvations, but that was the night that God used to speak to that man. And so all we did that night, it wasn't even, it was a guest speaker, but all we did that night was have an event, and we were faithful, the speaker was faithful, and that man's life was radically changed.
Yes.
And that's just the stuff you can't put into words. That's just incredible.
That's life, and that's what's so beautiful about ministry is getting those interactions and just being able just to take a little part in that, of that, just
Well, just
conversation.
while you're saying that,
Yeah.
I see something right here. I remember your dad coming and talking to me in my office, and he wasn't a believer. And he had all the head knowledge, but through everything, he was really struggling. And this was probably 2014 or 15, and then seeing your dad come to faith, and then your mom quickly after your dad was baptized. And then here you are. It's just that's what it's about. Like it's seeing families changed and lives changed, and that, yes, there's hardships, but there's even in 16 years of ministry, I'm still friends with people who I saw the Lord change their life in 2011, 2012, and I remember when they gave their life to the Lord and where they are now, and like that's what it's all about. Brett, what are some highs in your ministry that just, man, this is what it's all about?
And youth ministry is always fun. And yeah, like, oh, that's what those flashy things are a lot of people think when they think of youth ministry. But it's the things that actually matter and that stick with you are what you guys are talking about right here, of when you see students' lives change.
Yeah.
And I have to remind our youth leaders of this, because yeah, sometimes you do have it where instant overnight and just God just works on a student's life. But I just see so often that just year after year, you can just see these students growing closer to Jesus. And like those moments where, you have students accepting Christ or getting baptized, but also even in the moments where, you have students who their parents aren't even believers, and they're the ones praying for their parents and trying to minister to their parents. And it's just an amazing thing of just seeing them just grow closer to Jesus and then serving them. And that's even one huge blessing, even just right now in our church, of just, we have so many students who are so eager and willing to serve. And it's not always like that. Some, I know, and like at our last church and in some other churches, it's like pulling teeth to get youth ministry to serve. But that's just a huge blessing where you can see, hey, I want to serve because of what Jesus has done for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. Leadership, man. You've led the youth to serve, which is a testimony to your leadership. So that's awesome. But yeah, it's one of those things that... one way I look at it, again, I'm 100%, yes, change lives is it. Like that's, but I look at it in the macro picture a lot. Like, I'm not a very sentimental person, but sometimes I can get sentimental about this type of stuff, is that realizing that we are a link in the chain of God's church. Like that's just what's so awesome. Like if you look at, like you go upstairs and look at the wall of pastors, like since 1848 or something, this church has been in this community. And just to realize that we're here because the church was faithful throughout the generations, and it is now our responsibility to carry that torch, whether it's in Arcabutla, whether it's in New Palestine, or Picayune, New Palestine, whether it's in Oak Grove. Like, we are now tasked with this awesome responsibility of being faithful to the message, being faithful to people, and serving, so that in 100 years, there's 4 other people sitting in what I hope is still this podcast room, maybe a different spot, but and whatever they do for podcasts in 100 years, and talking about how holograms, yeah, maybe they might be. I'll stop from there. So, but yeah, so that's just an encouragement to me, is to realize that, hey, we're here because people were faithful before us, and it's now our responsibility to be faithful, so that more lives are changed in our areas for the next 100 years. We'll start wrap it up with this question, because I want to make sure that this is applicable to all people. So we got 3 people in ministry right here. 1 feeling called to ministry, serving as intern, who served in ministry for a long time. What are some words of advice that you would give to a lay person? Because we talked about right here, one thing that encourages us is what God does in our people, and how we see them serving. You're talking about volunteers and things on those lines. So if you were to talk to, and we only do what we do because there's people who hold us up. Like, we can only be ministries or be on staff because we have people supporting and holding the rope, if you will. And so what would be some of y'all's advice to a church member? They work 60 hours a week, they're busy, they're all that, but they're faithful, to how they can stay plugged in, how they can encourage their church, or how they can be used to be a healthy church member in the midst of their busy life, and what they can do to encourage their church and their staff as well. So anybody want to start with that?
I think I'll just say, just a reminder that just because you're not a pastor or missionary does not mean ministry is not for you. There's a passage that you quote all the time that talks about how Jesus has called us to be ministers of reconciliation. And that's for all believers. And so what's going to make it easiest on the ministers and pastors and the missionaries is when God's people realize that they're a part of this call. That, they too are called to share the gospel with their neighbors, to pour into the people's lives around them, and just do what God has called them to do. And even if that's not preaching, even if that's not teaching, even if that's not being a missionary overseas, God still has important work for you to do. And even just remembering that means whenever all the bodies working together and doing what they're supposed to be doing, that's when we're going to reflect Jesus the best. Because it can't just be the pastors and the missionaries. It can't just be those who are good at serving. It has to be the entire body with all of our gifts and abilities to best represent Jesus to our community.
Absolutely. I love that. Tyler?
Yeah. I guess word of advice is understand that your ministers and things like that, they're people too. We're not perfect, believe it or not. So we have our flaws, we make mistakes, and sometimes we make the wrong decisions. Sometimes we make very bad mistakes, and oftentimes we need grace as well as, your common person. Just
Absolutely.
Be understanding of that, and pray for your pastors, your ministers, your directors of ministries, and because sometimes they just have a lot weighing on them and some stress, and sometimes that can cause us just to have a slight wrong decision is made. And so, just be understanding of that. And
Can I say something real quick with that? I think we are very good as people to point out flaws, and very good to point out when, the pastor didn't preach on this very well, or did this bad in the sermon, or this. And there's a time and place to give good, constructive criticism and feedback. But just imagine if we as a church followed Scripture and being ones that actually encourage and uplift one another. And that will include dealing with some of those harder conversations. But man, just imagine if we were experts in encouraging and uplifting, of how much better and more united our churches would be, and how much more poured into our staff and ministers and pastors would be.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on that before we turn it over to Carrie real quick, because what I'm going to say goes right along with that to some degree, is that, remember, we talked about the importance of staying. If the threat is always, if it doesn't go my way, I'm leaving. It's impossible to lead people that way. And so I would just say on that line, yes, your pastors, your staff are going to make decisions you don't agree with at times. But if the threat is always, I'll pick up my toys and go, then you're not really following leadership anyways. And I would encourage you with this is to remember that, for example, our church has, you texted me the day, 400, 450 people, active members, not on the roll, but about active members. And we're not just leading you, we're leading 449 others too. And so a lot of times when people come to me and they're like, well, what about this? Well, you have to take in consideration the big picture. And I would love to do what you're asking, but there's these many people who that wouldn't work with, or how this wouldn't work. And so it's not that we don't care, it's that it's really not possible when you look at the big picture of things. And so to give grace in that as well is that, man, we have committees, and when you have 450 people in church, you have people that want to be on certain committees. Well, there can only be so many people on a committee. So understand that sometimes things have to happen that some people don't like, or things like that, and just give grace in the reality that there's a lot of people. And even when I was, my previous church, even when there was 50 people, you still had, there's 50 people here we're thinking about. I had a guy come to me one time and says about the music wars. And he wanted traditional music, and he said, nobody but you and a handful want there to be contemporary music here. I said, really? And I named off about probably 45% of the church, but he had not got outside of his bubble to know that there actually are a lot of people who want this in our church. So take into consideration that reality that your staff is trying to lead lots of people in unity, And it's something that, like Tyler said, we need a lot of grace to do. My other thing is just be faithful. Like, show up, be consistent. We have our ART acronym here. Was TAR at Arcabella, but it's ART here. It's
Makes sense.
yeah, but
More appealing.
A little bit more elegant in Missouri, I guess.
but be faithful with your abilities for your church, your resources for the work of the Lord through your church, and your time to your church, because that encourages pastors and staff more than anything. Is just faithfulness to show up, and don't miss that small faithfulness is such a blessing to not just your staff, but to your church as a whole. Carrie, what are some things you would say, especially from maybe a young person's perspective, how youth and young adults, what they can serve and how they can work in their local church to be those faithful, encouraging members?
Well, it's easy to get distracted learning so much and everything being so fresh of like, what do I need to do? Like, I need to do this, I need to do that. And I find myself getting so overwhelmed by trying to figure out all the things that I need to do and all the things that I need to apply. And so whenever I finally realized that if I love God and I love people, then all of the scripture and all of the things that I'm reading, it'll just naturally flow out if I just put love first. And I make sure that I'm loving him really well. And then through me loving him really well, loving people really well. And also, the whole, like, you don't have to be in vocational ministry to do ministry.
Absolutely.
Like, we were told by, I'm pretty sure, Chris Gunner at Arcabella Church, like, if you are a Christ follower, you are called to ministry. So wherever he may have you, don't let it discourage you that you can't do something, that he can't use you, because he will use you. And just love people really well with the love that he's put in your heart.
And don't underestimate the fact that we are the church. And, people say, well, it's easy for you to say this because you're vocational, this is your job. Well, number one, when you understand that's actually a higher, what's the Bible say in James chapter 3? Be not many teachers among you, because they will receive greater condemnation. Like, yes, we are in a position of leadership, but that's a huge responsibility because of that. But also know that, man, like, we are the church. Yes, our membership, like, we can only do what we as a church come together. And so every part of the body is important. And I mean, we talk about it in staff meetings a lot. We're always needing people to serve, whether it's in nursery or lead small groups or whatever. And we can only be who we are as a church. Like, and I'm not saying this because it's our church, but I think we are a very healthy, I mean, you tell me if you think I'm wrong. I think we are a very healthy, not perfect, but we are a healthy, active, ministry-oriented church. And it's not because of us. Mm-hmm. It's not, New Palestine's not that way because of you. It's not, Arcabo's not that way. It's because the people are being the hands and feet of Christ. And so remember that the church you're in can only do what God's called it to do if the church, which is the people, covenant together to do it. So in conclusion, I want to ask this question for you. What are some things you're looking forward to in your life and in your ministries that maybe we can be praying about or praying for, and just some exciting things on the horizon? Anybody got anything?
Can I share one more piece of advice?
No.
Okay.
Yes.
Just one more piece of advice for those feeling called to ministry, just because it always bothered me whenever I was in school of, if you are feeling called to ministry, start serving and volunteering and getting involved with ministry now.
Yes.
Don't wait till you're paid to do that. There is needs. Churches around you need you, whether you're in seminary or Bible school or just in your local area. Your church needs you. There are so many needs that need to be met, and you learn so much more about ministry by being involved with it. I was just very disheartened by so many people in Bible college where they were like, oh yeah, I'm going to be a pastor someday. And they weren't volunteering anywhere. They were just going to school and learning a lot, but they weren't applying it. And that should never be our way of living as Christians. It should always be a both and. Yes, we should be learning and knowledge, but we should also be living that out. And we need to do that, especially if you feel called to ministry.
And I'll say that, me and you can talk a lot, so I'll say that too, is, and I tell people this, I say, well, it's easy for you to do because you're vocational, you get paid to minister. Well, I'll tell you this, and the Lord is my witness, I did ministry before I even got a dime for it. But number two, if the world went crazy tomorrow and the economy crashed tomorrow, I would still preach and teach and serve regardless of it being vocational, because that's what God's called me to do. Now, it's a blessing and responsibility to be vocational in it, But that's not the reason we do it. It's because God's called us. And if you won't minister wherever you are right now, what's it say? If you're not faithful in little, you won't be faithful in much. Then you won't minister that when you get that job or that full-time position, because it's a heart posture, not a job. So good word. All right, Carrie, what's something you're about to leave us here pretty soon? So I'm sure you're looking forward to that. Just kidding. I hope you're not looking forward to that. What are some things coming up in your life and ministry that you're excited about, but we can be in prayer for you about?
Going to nursing school, hopefully starting springtime, so pray for that, please, because everybody's been telling me how hard it's going to be. But I'm very excited to love on people in that way, because whenever I was trying to figure out what I was going to do, senior year, even before senior year, it was between teaching or nursing, and I was like, well, how can I love people? Like, what job do I have the opportunity to love people a lot? And so, God was like, nursing, and so pray for that. I want to go do missions and also just love on people in my everyday life wherever He has me. So, yeah.
So medical missions is
medical missions is the goal.
Missions,
I want to do that.
Good deal. Well, remember that, because we're going to do some medical mission trips in the future. So
I'm going to come back.
Tyler, I know a kid might be one thing exciting coming in your future, but what are some ministry things and personal things?
So got a daughter on the way. That's right. In November we'll be here. But then I'm currently in school in New Orleans, going to Level College, picking up my undergrad for music, and then possibly pursuing a master's. Not sure how that's going to look just yet, but shout out Crescent City.
Don't you have them on your shirt too? Huh?
Yeah, Crescent City Worship.
There you go. Maybe they'll sponsor this podcast.
Maybe. Yeah, we'll see. That's been good. I had my first semester in the spring. It's been good. Coming up to the fall semester, getting back going to school. It's good. Getting a lot of connections, meeting a lot of people, learning too. It was very, very good. So it's been fun. Yeah.
Awesome. So school and church is doing good?
Yeah, church is great. New Palestine and Picayune. Man, it's so sweet. It's been sweet to me, my family, and just to the church staff in general, just to loving a healthy church. Like you said, it's not perfect, but it's healthy, and it's just, man, such a sweet time there, getting to serve with those other staff members and alongside the volunteers and other members. So
and good. Tell Walt he better treat you good, or I'll be giving you a phone call.
I got you. Yeah,
tell him. You can tell him I said that. So maybe he'll get you a raise.
That's right, yeah.
There you go. Well, one thing before we turn over to Brett, I'm going to say that I'm super excited about is Brett is wearing New Balance shoes and New Balance socks today. So I have discipled him to not cross brands. So
no, he hasn't.
When I looked down right there, I was like, that I'm so impressed. So
oh my goodness,
that's a win for me. But Brett, what are some exciting things you got going on? And
Sunday sounds like I'm going to make sure I wear like different everything, and so I'm going to wear 2 different shoes just to mess with you.
Oh, it'd kill me.
No, some exciting things. Obviously, Emma and I have a baby on the way, and so be praying for that, praying for her health and the baby's health. If you want to just support your pastors. McDonald's gift cards. Emma's craving a lot of McDonald's fries. No, I'm just joking. She's craving a lot of McDonald's fries. But I just want to say, too, and this is one of the first things I said to Nick when we got back from church camp, was I'm so excited for what God's doing and about to do in our church. And again, no profit. This isn't like, this is going to happen. But I just see amazing things that God is already doing. And I just see in this next year I think some great things are going to happen, not only in our youth ministry, but in our church as a whole. And so I'm just so excited for just the people that are going to come to Christ and the people that are going to serve and all of those things.
Amen. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I second that. Me and my wife were talking about the other night. If we don't get in our own way, and that's what I tell people all the time, if we don't get in our own way, the Lord is this church is primed to see the Lord do some amazing, and it's been used by the Lord for years. I mean, it's nothing just new, but this church has been used by the Lord for years and years and years, and I believe the pieces are in place for that to continue to the next generation. And if we don't get in the way as a staff and as a church, then the future, man, I'm so excited to see what the Lord is doing. We got some things I'm excited about. I'm not excited about this, but our associate pastor is retiring, so we have a lot of change happening staff-wise this year. So it's something I'm not looking forward to, but I am looking forward to see what the Lord does in it, because I don't know how it's all going to play out. Or I'm excited because anytime there's uncertainty, I've learned to be excited in it, because the Lord does amazing things through uncertainty. And Brett's not going anywhere; he's staying around. So if he was leaving, I'd be really, really sad about it. But he's going to be here, just in a different. So I'm just excited for our church. We got lots on the horizon, lots of things happening, moving parts, and it'll be an exciting time. And I'm just excited. My own family, hey, kids are growing. My wife's doing her health is a lot better than it used to be, which is an encouraging thing for us. And we're just in a good place to see the Lord work and move amongst my kids and our church as well. So I just speed that up because we're about to another hard stop. But I hope this was a blessing to you as we talked all things ministry. You got to know Tyler a little bit, Carrie a little bit better, and you know Brett and I well already. So know that Brett finally wears the same brand of socks and shoes. Have a great week.